Yeah, I'm gonna teach you some knowledge today, you liberals out there. Help you understand why you lose all the fucking time. You see, what we have here is like a range war, you know, and it's survival of the fittest. And I don't mean Darwin, because I know that his shit is all bullshit, but it kind of works at the political and local level. I'll show you what I mean. Taxes. I don't like any goddamn taxes. I own my own business. And I figure because I own my own business, I take a few liberties. For example, if I get paid in cash, you think I'm gonna declare that shit? I'm keeping it for myself. No harm, no foul. And when I invest in stocks, I'm I'm getting a tax rate half of what your income tax is, and I don't have to do jack shit. I just get my money. You. Yeah. And some other things. Like, you think you're gonna win the fucking vote. You think you're gonna take Donald J. Trump out. Well, we got something for you. We can work around that. If it's just a matter of a few thousand votes in our state, old Johnny will take care of that. Not only that, we can make it very difficult for people to vote, if you know what I mean. Maybe just have one worker at the polling station. You have a line about a mile long. 8 o'clock, it's over. Yeah. I do what I want. And you liberals are too weak to tell me what to do. I want to put a hole through a bucky there, I'll do it. I don't care about no goddamn rules for the hunting season. I'll go out at midnight and do it when everybody's sleeping. If it makes a loud noise, fuck 'em. Another example. I like driving like I want. I do as I please. I'm friends with people from the local police. I go over the speed limit a bit. I don't give a shit. I got one of those stickers that I support my local police. I drive like I want. I ain't getting no ticket, but you are. And you think you understand shit. I gets what I want. Yeah. You guys have to understand it's survival of the fittest, and you just ain't fit. And that's why we win all the time. And we will always win. Because you are too goddamn weak.
Well, good evening, everybody. It's Tuesday night, and it's Divided We Stand. Normally, we're on at 8 o'clock p.m., but we have a friend of ours, Sandy Shelley's, who has a wonderful show, The Environmental Coffee House, and they had a special guest tonight, so we decided we would switch times with her and start at 9:30, which is no biggie for us, and I know Sandy's going to be joining us in the chat room. So without any further ado, I'd like to welcome my co-host and regular guest, David Price. David, how are you doing there in Arlington, Virginia?
Would you get it right? Some weeks I'm a guest, some weeks I'm a recurring guest. I don't want to be your damn co-host, okay? so let's just say
Recurring pest.
a recurring pest, that would be okay. Yeah, I kind of like that.
Yeah.
Hey, Brian.
Now, it's good to see you, Dave, and hopefully we'll have people on our show tonight, or at least watching the show. I know it's a later show, but as it is, I know we get people who come in and come out, and you've noticed that yourself, Dave.
All right.
So, it's worth looking at and see what happens for a 9:30 show. But we're happy to see everybody here, and we already have quite a few people loading up, and we have guests from Periscope, YouTube, Facebook, and VK in Russia. So we're going to start with our Facebook group page, folks, which we hope you will become a member of. And after that, Dave's going to say a few things about the blog. We've had an interesting week on our group page. I'm going to show you our group page here, folks. I'd like to start off by actually showing you the cover photo. And this in itself caused a bit of a stir, Dave. I don't know if you remember this photo that I posted a few days ago. And of course, this photo has become very popular across the country. This, of course, is in Portland, Oregon. And you notice we have some sort of militia there grabbing this woman who seems frightened. And you'll see a number 26 there with the letter Z, with it Z26, but no real identification, no nameplate or name badge or shield or whatever you want to call it. And there was a lot of discussion about this, and actually getting back to Sandy Shelley, she mentioned that this, and I think she's appropriately saying this kind of reminds us of that famous photograph from Kent State. Would you agree with that, Dave?
Well, I think it captures a point in time. Now, for it to be a photo like Kent State, it has to last as long as that photo has. I mean, when I worked at the museum and did guided tours there and talks and lectures, of course, that was prominently displayed. And almost everybody who was aware of that time period or knew anything about it, I mean, that was one of the photos that they gravitated to. Whether this will become that type of thing or not, it certainly does capture a moment in time. And that moment is, as far as I'm concerned, Donald Trump has put together certainly a secret force, if you will. They really haven't identified where they're all from yet. Homeland Security, ICE. There's even been talk, since they're not marked in, that they're actually some kind of, guys that did black operations, private, in the Middle East, Afghanistan, Iraq. And of course, there's an interesting connection there because Betty DeVos's brother runs one of those organizations. So the point is, and it's a simple question for Americans that come out of this, is that the right thing to do? I don't think it is. I don't think it is. There are people that do. Obviously, Donald Trump thinks it's the right thing to do. No, he doesn't think that. What he'd like to do is he wants to run on a law and order platform. The cities are aflame, and black people and white people are joining together and running. Well, that's all wonderful, except you got moms. You got a wall of goddamn moms, right?
Right.
I don't think they're right. You've got now veterans going out, protecting. And there was a great photo today, Brian. I don't know if you saw it. I meant to save it and I didn't. They actually did a blow up of Portland. And they showed that where this is transpiring is a minuscule part of the city, right? And we've had reports everywhere else is there. I mean, it's just one place. And again, I think Mr. Trump, I don't really like to call him president because he's not my president, is playing a dangerous game here. He's saying, he's actually hoping for more violence and less law and order so that he can claim that he's a law and order candidate. But people have to remember, who's sending the troops in? Donald Trump. And also, where did this lawlessness come from? Donald Trump. It's not like Richard Nixon when he ran a very effective law and order campaign in 1968 and won. He was the outsider. Donald Trump is the incumbent. It's like trying to, he owns the coronavirus, whether he wants to or not. And he owns the violence in America, whether he wants to or not.
Mm-hmm. Also, folks, we have our comment box here, and I will be posting your comments, and that is a promise. If you are on Facebook and you don't mind your name, your first name would be fine, so we can identify you. I can't tell who you are. I just know that you're from Facebook when you post. If you're from YouTube, we've got your name. We got CB, good to see you. But if you're from Facebook, which is fine, just if you would, please leave your first name, and that way we know who you are. Because, look, most of us know each other if you're watching this show, especially the first 20 to 30 minutes of the show. The regulars are here. So yes, Dave, that's what we saw. We saw that photograph, which, is becoming like the photograph on the internet of these days. And I guess maybe it's that terrified look. And then,
Well, I mean,
it's a horrible picture,
right.
but
last I knew, in the American myth, but I don't think it was an American myth. America was looked on, we didn't do that kind of thing. That picture you're supposed to see where? Russia, right?
Right. Which, by the way, if I'm going to interject there before you continue, and I want everybody to understand, when we're talking about, this militia of sorts, I've said this for a couple of years about the militias in Russia, but over the last couple of weeks, I've talked about Rosgvardia, which is kind of like a private police force for Putin. And it's just, the analogies are there. They don't identify themselves, and they are supporters of Putin. And it certainly looks like these are perhaps untrained people. Like, just look at the way you see how that woman was grabbed. This is not unlike what we see in Russia. So when I make the comment that we're going to become Russians, we're kind of going through what people in Russia go through. It's just that we're not used to this.
And would it surprise you? There's no question that Donald Trump has connections in Russia. There's only really two possibilities. They own him. That means financially. And we do know, even though he does everything to keep his tax records and finances closed, it's clearly obvious that Russia was funding him at some point. But even if that's not the connection they're holding over him, he certainly has an admiration for Putin. He thinks Putin's a strong man. If anybody out there, and you won't tonight on this show, I constantly go on Trump pages and just ask this question: why won't your president? I would refuse to call him mine. Why won't your president condemn the Russians for putting a bounty on American soldiers? That's fallen all by the wayside. I think I don't know if it's Trump's plan or it's whatever, but there are so many crises going on. I have to remember every single day when I get up and when I go to bed that I'm still disturbed that kids are in cages. There's been 200 incidences since then of something we could get upset about. So, that's Donald Trump. I'm going to say with absolute certainty that Donald Trump will not win the election on November 3rd. If the election is in anywhere way fair, he cannot win it. He will not win it. But for now, we're dealing with a man who clearly wants to be a dictator. There's no question in my mind.
Right. Well, Dave, we've had a lot of commentary on our group page, and I could certainly go through a lot of these, but I'm not. But I don't know if you would agree with me, but I think you can see how the blood pressure has been rising with our members. We've had a lot of intense commentary, and you sense it with the country. You can see the hatred not just toward Trump, but towards Bill Barr, towards any number of Republicans, religious fanatics who are, saying that these protesters should be killed. I see that the intensity's there, and I don't want to go into today's testimony of Bill Barr, but I did notice that when Barr was questioned, there was a different tone with the Democrats. They were not going to ask many questions. They were going to play the Republicans game and say, you know what, we're going to humiliate this guy. We're going to say yes or no, but don't go any further than that. Unless you're asked a question, shut up and let me speak. And that's what they did today. And it's that intensity, which I actually like. I don't know what you feel about that, but I see that on the group page, and I see a certain ballsiness to the left now. Do you buy into that?
Well, okay. I think, and I'm not a political scientist. I'm not a historian. I'm a writer who was an educator. But if you look, again, you were talking earlier, Brian, about the picture from Kent State and this picture and what it'll become. We never know some of those moments, right? We just don't. They happen. And I think 100 years from now, they're going to look at that rogue killer in a police uniform who spent, what, 8 minutes and 48 seconds on George Floyd's neck. And you're the one that first said it. I mean, I'm sure, didn't say it first there, but one of the first people who said it to me. So I said, why? And you said, everybody's home, everybody's trapped, everybody's seeing it. And it did. I mean, other things have happened. This is certainly not the first one. But if you begin to see, that was the moment, suddenly, and when they didn't act immediately, and there are reasons why they didn't, but, you want that immediate reaction. I mean, there's no question that, he killed him. I don't care about the reasons. I don't care anything about that. But so that moment started to, and then all of a sudden, I mean, at that point you had to decide, is that Trump's America? Is it my America? Whose America is this? And it would be interesting if Mr. Floyd's name, and it'll be fitting, not taking away from any of the other black men and women who have been killed randomly for no apparent reason or for little reason, if at all, that he becomes the Rosa Parks of his time. So we'll see. So when you say the intensity, of course it is. Also, the countdown is there. We've got 98 days till the election. And this is going to be a very, I don't even have a word for it. It's going to be something like we've never seen before.
Right.
If nothing else, we haven't seen it because there's never been an election in a pandemic.
Right.
It's going to be fought much differently. Some people are, kind of, Joe Biden's in hiding. No, he's not. He's doing rope-a-dope. Mm-hmm. Why the hell would you open, I think one of the most brilliant political minds of my generation is Jim Carville. And I was listening to Jim the other night, and he basically said, Biden's running a brilliant campaign. Trump's biggest enemy is Trump. Why not let him beat Trump?
Right. Let Trump beat himself. Dave, with this show, I mean, and everybody should understand, Dave and I are prepared in the sense that we're always prepared because we talk like this when we're on the phone, and we kind of understand the world of politics. And actually, basically, we both understand, to a general sense, we understand pop culture in America. So this is nothing new to us. So when I say that we're prepared for conversation and to get into detail. But we don't plan out our shows per se at all.
I'm going to interrupt you. I don't care. You interrupt me. We don't. I thought it just popped in my head. I want to lose it. No, I'm not in any way equating you and I to Joe Biden and Barack Obama. But if you look at that conversation they had, it really was a conversation, right? Very, subtly and not so subtly. That great line that came up there. Not take responsibility. We never uttered those words, did we? Right? But I think there's a couple ways to go. Some people like a prepared lecture, and that certainly has its place. I watch guests on CNN or MSNBC or Fox or whatever you're watching, and interviewers prepared. But this is really, as you said, Brian, this is more or less a conversation. And what I'd like to encourage people to do is join into that conversation. Right. If I had a what I say? I shouldn't say complaint, but if I had a way that this show could improve, I wish people would ask more questions. Mm-hmm. The best we can do is try to answer them.
And we will post all of them. So, folks, you notice I haven't posted many yet. I'll repost those. We'll get there. But I don't want to see coming in and coming out. See them coming in and coming out. I will put them back on there, and we will address them. It's just that I want to let Dave speak and myself speak in the beginning. So, Dave, I think where I want to go tonight, if you don't mind, it's getting closer and closer to the school year for me and for my colleagues. It's certainly getting closer for those who are teaching in the South, where they usually open up the middle of August. And already the hurly-burly has begun down there. And I have no idea what's going to happen, but I know that you've been taught for 34 years. So I want to get your insight. Sure. Had you been put in this position, what would you have done? And is it any different than what you would do right now as a retiree giving advice?
Yeah. No. First of all, let me say this. It is very different. I'm a retired teacher. Okay. I'm a retired Johns Hopkins instructional coach and programmer. I'm a retired national urban districts school consultant. So, that's like saying, well, I fought in the war, but now I'm retired. So that's the first thing I want to make clear tonight. I'm not speaking as someone who's there. but I am going to speak tonight. I used to do this. I had to go into a lot of classrooms, unknown, if you will, and I always wanted to try to establish my credibility just real quickly. So if anyone doesn't know my background, and as I speak, this is what I'm speaking from. When Brian said it is 34 years of education, 20 years as an English teacher, teaching grades 9 through 12, from general students, basic skills, honors, AP, college. I mean, you name it. It was I pretty much taught it because I was one of the roamers. I like to change frequently. 5 years with Johns Hopkins, working, as I said, as an instructional coach and as a program coordinator working with teachers. So I wasn't teaching, but I was doing demo lessons, teaching. 5 years as a college professor teaching news reporting 1 and 2, and finished off my career after my retirement in New Jersey, down here in DC, working for 4 years with a national consulting company. So I say that not to brag or say, but I think I have some background in education. So let me attack it this way, Brian. As a writer and as a speaker, we try not to use cliches, right? Because cliches, are overdone. Well, the reason they're overdone is they make sense. Once upon a time, they were a fresh way of saying something, and people say, wow, yeah, that makes sense. And one of those is caught between a rock and a hard place. And in education, if there has ever been caught between a rock and a hard place, this is it. On one hand, we all know that schools need to be open for many reasons, but the two primary are education, and there are so many services that schools now offer, food services, counseling services, not to mention extracurricular
health services.
The whole thing, right? Health ones. And if any student is not in school, they do not get those services. We also know that basically American schools, for the most part, were shut down in the 4th marking period or the 2nd semester, depending on the program or the way you arrive at it. And so basically we went to online learning, and nationwide, that was a fiasco, pretty much. We also asked parents to assume the role of teachers, and that is not their role. Their role is to parent. It's a much different role. So there wasn't a whole lot of positive to come away with from that experiment. So obviously people are a little leery to go back in. Working class people, what do you do? Child care, and back and forth. So they're all valid arguments for opening school. On the other side, you have the safety issue. Sometimes in life, just something strikes you. And the other day I was in Target. We had to pick up something. And even though I don't ever plan to be in a classroom again, August to July, late July, August, you're always getting that itch. And so I just want to go see, and they had a big section set up for back to school, notebooks, and they had two giant 4 shelf of hand sanitizer. Okay, hand sanitizer. This, if we do go back, if students go back, is much more valuable than pens, pencils, notebooks, whatever. Now, those of us who've taught know how hard it is to keep a school clean. Is Union Station in DC clean? Not really. People come and go and use it. And you're talking about kids. You're talking about, some schools, 2,000? Some schools, of course, much smaller. So I don't think you could ever have said that schools were a bastion of sanitary conditions before. And now, to be safe, they've got to be pristine. Can that be done? Secondly, can it be done without money and finances? Now, the reality of financial situation in education is this. State budgets are going to be down. They're not going to be able to provide the money. Local districts, local are not going to be able to provide. So they're going to look to the federal government. And the federal government is very divided. I mean, there's nothing in America that's not divided. Tonight's show is divided America. Should we go back to school or should we not? And I bet you that comes down, Brian, quite honestly, probably if you did a poll of everyone in the United States, it might be pretty much an equal split. Yes, we should go back. No, we shouldn't. And that would be, different groups might have different, reactions, but nationwide it would be that. Students divide in the same way parents, etc. So what does all that mean? Well, it means this. We're right back to the point I mentioned. We know schools need to be open. They need to be open as quickly as possible so education can resume. That's a given. On the other hand, I will submit tonight that outside of a very few, and when I say few, more than a handful, but very few districts are in any way in position to have their students returned. And some to me is insane. For Florida even to be talking about it, to me, is completely insane. And you say, well, Dave, come on, man. No, let's look at it. You have to look around. This pandemic's new, Brian, correct?
Correct.
I haven't been involved in one. 1918, I've said before, that might as well be 1618. We're a modern world now. But, okay, so we want to get sports back. Now, I do believe, I think I'd be correct in saying this, sports has access to far more money than the education system, right? I think the Phillies, baseball, or the Knicks, whatever you want to pick, they're multi-million, verging sometimes on billion-dollar total collective operations, and so they want to get baseball season back, and that's understandable, right? It lasted 4 days, and what do I mean by lasted 4 days? Currently, depending on the numbers, either 14 or 18 of the Florida Marlins players and coaches have tested positive for COVID. I think, again, people need to understand this. If they don't, you can go and get a test on Monday, test negative, go out and contract the disease 15 minutes, correct? There's no time limit. So you can't test all this. There was talk, remember, earlier talk, students will be tested, teachers will be tested. Well, they're doing that in baseball, and a lot of people are saying they just won't make it. People are already saying the football season won't. Well, my question then becomes, if they can't do it, how would you expect schools dealing with young men and women who haven't reached maturity, and all the science now points to, you really don't start making good decisions now. It's not an age thing, but your brain development until your 20s, and they can question that sometimes. Certainly in my life, they can question I made good decisions. Now, let's throw all that up. Who's the main push for this? Comes from Donald Trump. All right, why does Donald Trump want kids to go back to school? Does he really care? I'd ask him, does he really care if they're educated?
No, we know why he wants to go back.
Well, no, let's look at it. First of all, I'm going to tell you he doesn't want them educated, because an educated person will find fault with Donald Trump. So we can eliminate that, correct? So now what's left? Let's see. What's left? Oh, he needs all the normalcy he can get to have any shot. Now, I don't think he's a very good gambler. And I think there's proof to that. 3 failed casinos in New Jersey alone. A failed university, a failed steakhouse. There's failed everything he's done, including the presidency. But, he thinks, okay, we'll just push. And look, I don't know the man. I mentioned before, I've been in his presence 3 times. And when I say in his presence, once was he pushed James Brown off the stage at one of his casinos, and he wanted to talk. Once I heard him speak in Washington, and once I heard him speak at a campaign rally in Atlanta. So yeah, but I think I've read enough and knows. No, he doesn't care. He really is this kind of person. I think, Brendan, I've never known anyone like this in my life. He thinks not that he can will it in, but if he doesn't think it's serious, it isn't serious. Come on. So you've got this push for that. So I'd be leery of that. Then you've got Betty DeVos, who is going to go down in history as the worst education secretary, as many of Trump's people will, who's never been in a classroom. What does she want to do? She makes her money, among other ways. She makes her money on private schools. So this is another push.
Well, would you go back? Would you go back if tomorrow you had to make the decision? What would it be? Or are you thinking, what's the union thinking? Blah blah blah.
I think that. Well, look, I mean, I'm not going to try to duck it. I'm going to say, first of all, you would have to say, where am I going back? Okay. In other words, am I going back in Montana? Am I going back in Florida? Am I going back in New York or New York City or Upper New York State? There is a part of locality. Where that stops, though, is in America. It doesn't mean somebody infected from New York City can't drive to upstate New York and give it. So, but I mean, you would look at that first.
Right.
Secondly, you would look and see what does the majority of your colleagues. That doesn't mean you'd go automatically in lockstep with them. Today, American Federation for Teachers, Randy Weingarten, their president, announced that they will support. They're the second largest organization, NEA being the largest in the country of teachers, that they will support any district that can justify that the district has not made it safe for students and teachers to return to school. They will support and help them with a strike. Now, that's already kind of, talk about striking before we're even there. Okay, so that's the first thing. Where are you? The third thing would be, what type of students do you have and your relationship with them? Mine, I always thought my relationship, again, I would let my students speak for themselves. I mean, I don't judge myself as a good teacher, bad teacher, whatever. I think teachers that do are, kind of kidding themselves. The students decide, the parents decide, the community decides. So I think I would listen to them or think about them. And I think today I would take the same role I'm taking as a citizen. I do not want to get the disease. I'm 68 years old. I don't want to die. I don't have a death wish. Secondly, I'm in relatively good health, but being at 68, right? I mean, you begin every year, you push up a little bit on it. But even worse, and now the new studies that are coming out, Brian, are frightening. We concentrate on the number of cases and the deaths, right? The two. But that doesn't count the hospitalizations and the things that we're seeing in long-term stuff, and people it's going for weeks and months and still recurring stuff. So even if you survive, you may not ever be the same again.
Right. Dave, I think what we're saying is there's much more to look at than just the fact that this is a mortal decision that one has to make.
Seriously, Brian, and I'm going to interrupt you, but I am again. I think this is interesting from this standpoint. Teachers really aren't always looked at as individuals. Would you agree? I mean, I think it's collectively teachers, right?
It can be that way, yes.
All teachers are bad, or this school is, and it's not about that. We're all individuals. And the thing that I think a lot of people forget, too, is it's not just the teacher making the decision, all right? Teachers have spouses. Teachers have children. Teachers have grandchildren. Teachers are just like everyone else. Now, I talked to quite a few teachers who really want their kids to go back, but they're not. So, it's not, I'm joking, but that's not even a joke. So I am going to now answer your question. I don't want to hedge it. At this point, saying just, yes, I would go back or no, I would not. I don't think it's safe. I don't think it's safe for me. I don't think it's safe for the students. I don't think it's safe for education. Now, what I would like to say, and then, Brian, I want to question you a little bit, too. Mm-hmm. What I would like to say is I would have done things differently. And that's so easy. I mean, I'm not the educational czar. I'm not anybody. Look, and I'm not faulting. Understand, I'm not faulting education. Everyone out there kind of fell to that, right? People had a week or two to get their stuff home. The difference is that teachers were working with kids, but somebody else was working with numbers. It was an adjustment period. And schools weren't ready for it, some more so than others. Again, urban districts, poor districts, not computers, not this, not that, not the other thing. So it's not about what we did. But I think clearly Donald Trump, I do, because the president, Truman was right, the buck stops here. And if not Trump, Betty DeVos, and if not that Department of Education, should have issued national guidelines and not waffled on them. And what I would have issued is this. I would have told, if I were running, I would have told every school district in America, look, we want to get you back as quickly as we can. You want to get back as quickly as you can. We don't know. This pandemic, Brian, the thing that everybody has to remember, we're not in control. Anybody thinks, anybody thinks humans are in control right now are absolutely out of their mind. The pandemic is controlling what we do. We're reacting to a pandemic. Now, having said that, what do? I would have told everybody, you know how to teach if we go back. Would that be correct, Brian? I mean, people have been doing it.
You don't know what you're doing after a certain number of years teaching. You shouldn't be a teacher, right?
And there was nobody in there unless somebody was hired on a Monday and the school shut down on Tuesday and at some teaching. Obviously, if you're a first-year teacher, you're not as good as a second. We go through that. What I would have done is said, we're going to spend all our time getting ready for what I consider to be the inevitable. We will be either in a hybrid situation, sometimes in, sometimes out. But we know online, and that is every school district's weakness, every college's weakness. Some are better than others. The idea of school is teachers and students in a building, right? That's what we have. But that's not where we're going to be. Now, the last thing I want to make, before I do ask a couple questions, or we'll talk from your side.
And then after that, we do want to go to the chat, because I think they're zeroing in on this conversation.
Yeah. Let's go. If there's questions about this, let's go in between you coming in. Mm-hmm. But the idea that I think people need to understand is this: school's not going to be normal if you go back. Okay, it's not going to be. Not normal. Look, schools are doing. Here's one plan. Monday, a quarter of their kids come in. Tuesday, a second quarter. Wednesday, the school's closed. They clean. Thursday, another quarter comes in, and Friday, another quarter comes in. So no school is really going to go back to the way it was in 2019. So to say we're going back to school, what are we going back to school to? For how long? That's part of it. The second thing is, I keep hearing about this loss. Yes, it was a loss. Of course it was a loss. It was a one marking period loss. Some people think, I'll argue with any.
Yeah, you didn't lose the year.
Any education person. What?
Well, you didn't lose the year. A lot of people, we just lost the year. Maybe you did lose a graduation, but you didn't lose the year.
You lost the things that are important. But I'm talking about academically, you lost one quarter of your year. And even if you did, even though learning was not done well, if you did any of that, you didn't even lose the whole quarter. So I would have done that. I would have said to schools, here, we're not going to open until after Christmas. Teachers are going to come in. They're going to work. We're going to get the best distance learning plans we can get. And it's not following the syllabus because the syllabus, which everybody wants you to follow, was done under the idea that you would have teachers in front of you. I worked with a teacher, who's a very good teacher, an excellent teacher. She's not excellent because I taught her. I happened to teach her English, and she's now an English teacher. And we worked together to do online Macbeth. The day she said that, I said, oh, my God, this is going to be doomed to failure. Macbeth is not something you teach as distance learning to urban students. You need them there. You need that. So you would have needed to change the curriculum. You would need to have done a lot of things, and they weren't done. So, no, I don't think schools are ready to open. I don't think they should. I think that I don't think I would go in. I don't think I would go in.
That's fair enough. So I guess you want to ask me, obviously, about what I would do.
Consider I just did a hypothetical.
Right. This is the real situation.
What the hell are you going to do, bro?
Right. Well, first of all, you know that I'm agitated about the whole situation. But I come about it from kind of a different angle. Of course, I'm worried about the obvious. It's a mortal threat to my life. I'm 60 years old. I have a 90-year-old mother-in-law living with me. I have a wife who's around my age. It's dangerous. But more so than that, one thing I don't like, as much as I said as we came on the show, we don't have a specific plan, but there's a certain outline. And if you're prepared for something, you do it. Just like tonight's show, we can do it. I could teach a lesson right now if I had to go back to the school right now in 2 minutes, as well as you. You could do it also. But what I mean by that is you have a certain number of kids in your room. Now you're basically in a self-contained room. And then you're going to be I'm going to be responsible for keeping certain things clean. I'm going to be responsible for making sure the kids have the masks. And I've got to deal with sanitation in the room. I mean, we can say that you'll have a custodial staff to do things, but they're usually long after the fact, after the kids are all gone. But the real deal is when you're teaching and when you have students eating lunch in the classroom, and you have situations that as a teacher, full well. And this is not just in my district, but all across the country. You have guidance departments that continually throw kids in your class. It's called getting slammed. And out of nowhere, you might start with 4 or 5 kids on those days that you say, that those hybrid days. Then what happens when you get 8? And now you have a proximity problem. And then the kid doesn't have their mask on. Now you have discipline you have to worry about. And then that, again, it wouldn't matter whether it's my school or another. It's just every school handles discipline differently. Every administrator can handle something differently. And now you have an entire can of worms. And then meanwhile, we're not sure about the liability factor. First of all, McConnell's worried that the staff will sue, or the students will sue the school district or the companies that provide the sanitation. Whatever it is, they're afraid of a litigious society, and that's understood. But what happens if a student contracts the disease? Now they want to sue me and say, as a teacher, I didn't do my job right. So there's just an exponential number of things that can go wrong. And from your experience, if the people above you are not really capable of handling these things that are coming at them, why wouldn't I be afraid?
And let's that I was a kind of teacher. Let's say I just have a problem with authority when authorities. Well, that's true. But I did my job, and they couldn't do theirs. What can I tell you?
Dave was the boss, and he was at the bottom.
No. But here's the thing. What happens is I was fortunate in my career, in both careers as a journalist and to be in some limited position bosses. And to be honest with you, you can't relate unless you are a boss, okay? But but here's the thing. You could be the best administrator in the United States of America right now, but you've never administrated in a pandemic. Okay, so you made some interesting points that made me think. We're going to address Bridgeton High School or not. It's sort of like when I attack America. I attack America because I love it. I don't attack it because I hate it. I know
you like American culture. Let's face it.
Well, I love Bridgeton High School. I always will. I was a student there. I was a teacher there. What is that? Hell, people just said you never got the hell out of there. Well, I did for when I was a reporter.
And by the way, if I may mention. This has become an art form in school in American pop culture. You'll know if any of you have experienced somebody putting a tack on somebody's seat, because of that little metal spot. Dave Price invented that action.
Well, no, that's not true, because that would harm people. But let's just put it like this. I had, as a student, I had up close and personal relationships with many administrators. And that continued when I was a teacher. Not always the best. But here's the thing. All right, let's look at it. Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't been in that building as a teacher for almost a decade now, the building where you teach. But as I recall, there was one custodian on during the day. Is that correct?
We have had 2 of late. We had one very good one, as you remember. But
I'm not talking about good. I'm talking about 2.
2, yes, 2 right now.
The number
if they're
2,
healthy.
Which, according to Three Dog Night, is the loneliest number after the number 1, right? So you got 2 people. Brian, what's the rough student population size?
1450.
How much?
1450.
That's 1,450,
yeah.
I think, right? And so you have 2 custodians to take care of 1,450 students.
Spills, vomit, everything. Bathrooms.
Right. Now,
trash.
What would it take to get more custodians in there? Well, you could shut down the other schools, right? And bring all your custodians. There's no answer other than to hire. I don't know. So that's number 1. Number 2, and I want anybody tonight to think about this, okay? If you know kids, are kids going to willingly want to wear a mask? Absolutely not. Now, some will, some won't. And think about this. Some are coming from homes where they don't wear masks. You know, so you got all this going on. Now, what are you going to do when a kid doesn't wear a mask? Well, let's see what options you have. You're going to shoot him dead? Don't think so. All right. Are you going to suspend him or her? Well, that kind of defeats the purpose, right, of getting it back into school. What about if it's 20 kids? What about if your whole class says we're not? I mean, there's kind of things, and that will happen. All right, there'll be a number of kids that wear masks. Be very polite about it. There'll be a number of kids that won't. Now let's look at the illness factor. And you and I have talked about this. I think it's something we have to consider, though. Okay, so let's go back to baseball. 18 Marlins. They are not playing for a full week, correct? And that's true. It is correct. All right. Games have been canceled, and actually 4 teams, right? Because it was the teams of the Phillies. You know, Phillies
right,
were
the
there.
Phillies played them, so they have to be quarantined. Also,
Phillies. I'm sure the Phillies are. You know, they're not real happy that they played a team that had that. Well, maybe that's the trick. I don't know. Yeah, that's true too. But my point is, it affects geometrically, right? So let's say, and Brian, I'm going to use you. I hope it never happens, but I'm going to use you. All right. So you are teaching this class, and one of your students comes down with the virus. Now, immediately, they're supposed to quarantine for 14 days.
Correct.
It's the 10 is confusing, but it's still 14 days. All right. Now, everyone who's exposed to that person, in theory, should be quarantined for 14 days too. Now, so in that class, I'm going to say you had 8 students, right? So obviously you and those 8 students should quarantine, but you're going to have 2 other classes, right?
Correct.
So now, and let's say you have 10 in one, and let's say you have 9 in the other. So now you're up to a bunch of people.
And that student was probably in 3 other classes too.
And there you are. So that's one thing, and that will happen in many schools. That will happen. The worst case scenario is death. What happens? And this is where Bruce Springsteen is my idol in rock and roll music, and Bruce has a song came out around the time of 9/11, and it was "Who Wants to Be the Last to Die for a Mistake." Well, I'm going to change the lyrics, Bruce, if I may, for a moment. Who wants to be the first to die for a mistake? And that's really what you're saying. And there are people, I'd love to tell you differently. I basically believe that human beings are good, but not all human beings that collectively were good. There are people who really don't care.
Well, let me ask you, again, this is going to sound pseudo-sexual, and I don't want this to come off as anything but just a comment, but if there had been some sexually transmitted disease in which 3% of the population would die 14 days later after having sex, what effect would that have on society? It would be worse than AIDS.
Again, I'm going to say to you, in American society, it depends. We kind of had that with AIDS, and it was gay, and we didn't care. I mean, not the whole, but I mean, no, you're right. But see, I think, again, we don't know enough. We don't know enough about this disease, okay? And a lot of people say, well, but this is what science does. They're doing this in real time, okay? And look right now. Yes, the disease comes after the elderly. And the other thing is, the virus doesn't kill anybody, okay? It attacks and attaches organs, which then fold and default is really what happens, okay? And the elderly, those that have a condition, they can't handle it. The virus is not seeking to kill anyone. You know, the virus is not a sentient being. But the idea of it is, and this is one of the reasons why a lot of times viruses, as they mutate, they can reach more people, but they're less deadly because they need a host, right? I mean, you really look at that.
The vector needs a host.
What?
The vector needs a host to survive.
Correct. And they are the vector, and we're the host. Now, can you imagine, and you can, so this is kind of hypothetical, I'm asking anyone else. Everyone listening tonight, if they work, they have friends at work, suppose it happens in your business, but it's your son, it's your daughter. We're talking about. I mean, I just again, say what you will. My expertise is that I would not open school until January. I would have every teacher come in. I would have them work to get prepared, By January, what else will we know? We'll know more about the disease, right? Now, I've been leery all along, and I may have been wrong. I'll be so grateful because I was wrong. I was going that the fastest vaccine developed in world history was for polio, and that was 4 years. And we're already in human trials. I mean, we may get it within a year. We may. So, what's the rush now? You know, is it really worth?
Well, that's where we get into politics because there's a big rush for any type of uptick in the
Well,
economy.
I understand that. And, does Mr. Trump used his power to say he would give money, but you have to go 5 days a week. Now, I'm not sure he can count that high, but what does he mean by 5 days a week? Does he mean every student must go 5 days a week for you to get the federal money? Does it mean, and again, people, I'm going to tell you, okay, and I saw Keith was on. Hey, Keith. Keith,
and we will get to your comments, folks, very soon with the next few minutes.
But Keith, I love your country. I know you look at it and you probably have problems with it. As most of the people on the show, or if they've been here before, know, my son is working for the University of Australia, designing some programs for them over there, or actually helping them begin a new college at the University of Australia. My daughter-in-law is there, and of course, the two people that I love most in the whole world, my grandchildren, are there. They're back to school. They're playing sports. They've done brilliantly. All right. They've done brilliantly. So can schools open? Yes. America is not ready for it. We're making a huge mistake. And you know what, Brian? I really hope I'm wrong. And, the schools open and nothing happens. But I can't see it. I can't see it.
All right. So you're definitely saying you wouldn't go in. I'm saying right now, I'm not liking what I'm seeing. And I'll make my decision when I see what's there and how people are handling it. And we'll just have to really wait, I think, Dave, until we see what's going to happen in Florida,
Brian,
the second week of August.
I mean, look, we don't know. Okay, we don't know where the United States will be in September, nationwide, with the pandemic. You don't know, because you're the one going into work, you don't know where New Jersey will be.
Right.
But that'll have an impact. And you don't know where the county of Cumberland will be, which will have an impact on you.
Right.
And you don't know where the city of Bridgeton will be. And neither do they. Now, I don't want to make it, I wouldn't
want to be in Florida. I think my decision will be made there.
I want to be specific. If somebody out there tonight has some expertise and they want schools to open, I'm not going to argue with you. I said it's this, right? I'm going to tell you, to me, safety overrules the other concerns. Here's the other thing that I find interesting. And again, I do want to pick on Mr. Trump because Mr. Trump is supposed to be the president. He's not my president. He is some people's president. And here's what he says. Oh, I want a big convention. Oh, no, I don't want a big convention now, right?
Right.
Now, wait a minute. It's okay for schools to open, but not for you to have adults in a convention?
Do as I say, not as I do.
Really? Come on. So get to some questions, Brian. Do we have any questions?
Sure. Let's go through them, folks. And let's just go through them. Now, some of them were in the beginning of the show, but
sure.
I like this because it seems like a straightforward, simple question, but it's not easily answered. Keith says, why are not all Americans on the street demanding Trump leave and leave now? What's your take?
Okay. In general, well, first of all, I'm going to say they are.
Some are,
now,
yes.
Not all. No. Keith, like being 68 years old, I was actually around in 1968. In fact, that's when I became political. And it became on the streets of Washington, D.C. I was a student at Villanova at the time, and we would come down here and we protested and all that. And, it was a different time. So I've seen, there are just periods of time. Basically, Trump has really shell-shocked America. Now, someday I want to ask him if he'll talk to me. I keep wearing my anti-Trump shirts, and he just doesn't call me, but I guess he's too busy. No, I really do believe this. Keith may help you answer. First of all, Trump did not want to be, nor do he intend, nor did he run to be president. Donald Trump ran to increase the Trump brand. That would have been anything he wanted. He wanted to be a bigger star in The Apprentice. Notice when he chose, he was in an argument or a dispute with them over his control of the show, etc. And there are very good, reliable sources that say what he was going to do, build up and then start his own network, the Donald Trump network. And if he remains out of prison, that may be what he does after he leaves the White House. Right. So that was
I would
that.
say also, Keith, that, I mean, sure, there are people out there protesting, but in general, most Americans sit on the sidelines. But when they will vote, though, because that's an easy way to protest. Right. And even then, you want more to come out. But I think that you'll see that at the very minimum in November. You'll see that. Whether it's a fair vote or not, you'll see right. people come out. Now, that doesn't mean that people won't take to the streets. I think it takes a certain event, like Dave said, some things pop out of nowhere. For example, if there was a big cheat and everybody knew it, and all of a sudden Trump had figures of 77% for and 23 against, then you know that something's up, and then people take to the streets. Or there has to be something like a George Flynn thing. And squared.
And Keith, to answer your question a little bit more directly than I did, I was trying to give some background, but America is not just divided in half. I think sometimes we're really divided in a third. A third, didn't vote for Trump, voted for Hillary Clinton. A third voted for Donald Trump, and a third sat it out. So, you've got, it's probably about the same right now in terms of that. A third feels schools shouldn't maybe be open. That'd probably be the smallest third. A third don't care. So you're talking about a small percentage of people. Now, also, they're out on the streets right now. People began, as I think they should, they took to the streets basically to deal with the rampant, destructive racism that is 401 years old. It predates America. It predates our Constitution, and that's what they're out there for. That's what it started, right? And I think a lot of people right now are hoping that calmer heads will prevail, as they have in many of the larger districts. Atlanta, many in California are doing online only, right? So it's not nationwide. So it does come down. And a lot of times, Keith, if this helps understand too, a lot of places, are. Well, let me give you the example. Bridgeton, where I lived and where Brian lives now and where I taught and where Brian teaches now, is a very poor community of about 22,000. Okay. And ironically, I live in a community of 22,000 here, but the average income here is probably almost $100,000 more than the average income in Bridgeton. So you have wealthy people who have more access to schools. Every school in Virginia in this area has now decided to go online. Now, again, why aren't they out in America? Because just those factors. It's not an American issue. There's people who want them back. There's people who don't care. Now, the question becomes, what happens?
All right, so there's some other comments here. CB, first of all, good to see you, CB. We always enjoy you having you here. Thanks, I know you're very active on the Reality Report and Divided We Stand. Quick comment, but he says the brown shirts. He wants to scare, and I think that's something that must be brought up. He certainly is doing something with it, Dave, and it's probably not being as effective as he likes.
Oh, yeah. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here. So I don't really have history backing me up necessarily, but I kind of do. Hitler used brown shirts, correct?
Correct.
He used them very
Jack boots and brown shirts.
Hitler had two things. He was crazy. I mean, literally. But I think he was seduced by power and used it. He had no essence of humanity in him, right? But he used it. He also was surrounded by Himmler, Goering, the third echelon, Eichmann. They were some evil dudes, right? They really were.
Absolutely.
Now, I don't really think Bill Barr stacks up against Himmler any day of the week. Bill's eating too many whatevers. No, so I mean that's part of the brown shirts. Now, let's look at Stalin. You could make a strong argument if number killed, Stalin was more evil than Adolf Hitler. the concentration camps, of course, move Hitler into a separate
But
category.
Stalin didn't do it until he was given the power to do it.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? I mean, and that's why I say we can't give Barr too much credit compared to Himmler, because we don't know how Barr would react given the same situation
that's
environment.
leading up to the point I want to make. The key thing about Trump is he's a wannabe. He's a whining wannabe. I don't know. I mean, let's look. Brian, really, what does he carry through with? I mean, he pushes and pushes and pushes and threatens and this and that and the other. What's he really done? I mean, every time, not every time, of course, we saw, and I got to go back to that. The kids in cages, I got to remember that. As I said, I got to get up in the morning and remember that. I've got to go to bed at night.
What's what he hasn't done? That's the problem. What he should have been doing, looking at those tweets and doing things. It's his inactivity. And then encouraging Trump to go ahead and say these things about Roger Stone and Michael Flynn. But it's what he doesn't do.
Well, that's true.
And that's his job, is to do something.
As I said, I am convinced, and of course Donald Trump, he's over 20,000 lies now that have been proven that he said in 4 years in office. So I don't know if I believe him he said anything, but I believe that he did not seek the presidency to seek the presidency. He sought it to name recognition, whatever, to do it. But now he may want to desperately keep it because there's a very real chance that once he leaves that office, the state of New York will be ready to have a very solid case against him.
Which he does know, and that is an issue.
Well, of course he knows that. I mean, of course he knows that. So that, yes, brown shirts, yes. I think, first of all, we need to find out, and I'm a little, I mean, I don't want to attack my colleagues in the press, and I know it's very hard to do, but who the hell are those guys, right? I haven't seen a definitive yet. Who the hell are those guys taking people against the Constitution off the streets in Portland? Who are those people trampling on mothers? Who are they? What are they? I mean,
we don't know.
And we don't. So, yes, they look like brown shirts, but certainly Trump, just like Trump is a failure as a president, he would be a failure being Adolf Hitler too.
Well, but there is this expression in economics that money is what money does. And I would say that these militiamen, they are what they do. And they're doing the same thing in a certain sense. And say, given the opportunity, I think they would take it. But that's another story. But I think that you're...
Brian, I mean, if they are military, that's one thing. If they are police, that's another. If they're ICE, that is a third. If they're the janitors that are from Homeland Security that want to, go out and wear this shit. I mean, we need to know that. Now, it doesn't make a difference if you're shot with a rubber bullet or you're clubbed or you're taken. But we, as American people that aren't important, we need to know that.
Right. But when you look, let's take a look at this picture here again, Dave.
Right.
I'll blow it up a little bit. I mean, let me get the time out of here.
Right.
I mean, first of all, this is a defenseless woman. She's not any threat. I just don't, I mean, of course it says police there on the front, and that could mean anything. You just have anything sewn on. But anybody who, unless he's trying to protect the woman and they could say that this is just caught in action there, you wouldn't see a professional do something like that. First of all, he knows she's terrified. Is it absolutely necessary for him to take both of his hands to grab her?
You wouldn't see a policeman spend 8 minutes and 38 seconds killing a man.
Right. So look how well they're protected. These guys are ready for everything. They've got a bulletproof vest. They've got who knows what they have. Gas masks, special helmets, night vision. It's obnoxious. So I think this looks like a professional army of some sort, but it doesn't seem like it's the U.S. Army or the National Guard. This really stinks of Russia, and maybe that's because I'm into Russia.
I mean, anybody with any sense is going to see that and say that. But, it's just, how do we let this man, who some people believe is their president, form this thing? Well, we didn't know about it, but now we do know about it. Why aren't people demanding? I'm not saying me. I mean, see people in power. Where are these guys? Who's paying the bill? Who's giving the orders? What do we have?
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be traced back to Donald Trump, of course. He can't distance himself from it. But I think, to me, that's an important question to know, simply because the more we know about Donald Trump, the more we know how to combat him.
Okay. Well, there was an interesting. Her name was Applebaum. I can't remember her first name. She was an NPR 3 days ago, Dave, and she wrote a book. I think it was entitled "The Twilight of Democracy," and somebody kind of asked the question. I think the question was something similar to that, but it was about Republicans. And she said, why aren't Republicans doing anything about this? Because we know that in private, some are saying, yes, he's a despicable person. I don't like him, blah, 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 blah. And she said there's a multitude of reasons. Number one, it could be they actually buy into it. Another thing, they could be afraid. They have ulterior motives, or they want to get some specific agenda put through. But for whatever it is, they've all gone into that lane. All roads lead to Rome.
With the exception, once in a while, Mitt Romney will drive out.
That's okay. And you know what? That's because he's deeply religious and screwed up in his own way. But it's good because it's made him do the right thing. He's introspective. But this is the issue. I think that's the real question, Keith, that should be asked. And I think she answered it. It's because the Republicans haven't done anything. We will come out. Look, we do this show because we're pissed off. But the real question is, why won't Republicans, do anything? And again, it can be a multitude of reasons, but it's frightening, because that means that these people are willing to follow, and that does remind me of Nazi Germany.
Of course it does. And I'm going to take it a step further. I do think that what I don't get, I actually understand. Donald Trump ran, he won, okay. I understand the Republicans back him. We put too much emphasis on the R's and the D's and not enough on philosophy, the theology or practicality of liberal or conservative, which is really, unfortunately, there are no liberal Republicans and there are no conservative Democrats. There's some centrist Democrats and some left Democrats. But what I do, the group that I do hold fault with are my friends and my family and my former students and my ex-colleagues in all the jobs that I've worked, who find it somehow they can justify this abomination of a human being, let alone the worst president in United States history, and Lord help us if we ever get someone worse. If we didn't learn our mistakes. Now, we could make light of some things. Okay, remember when you were growing up, Brian, everybody said, boy, anybody can be president. Well, Trump proves that, right? I mean, anybody can be president.
Anybody can be president. But that works both ways. Dave, I want to, if you don't mind, I'd like to, because this is such a wonderful question. It's simple.
I can't see him, Brian. Can you raise him up? I mean, I can't see him.
I'm trying to make this bigger for you. I'll put you on the screen, Dave, and see if.
Take me off. I just want to see the question.
Because, as you know, Dave, with my other channel, a lot of the people do not agree with me politically. We know that a lot of people stand on the fence. A lot of people just absolutely refuse. We've had debates with Antonio, who's a former Republican, actually, who has decided that he says it's better not to. And that's his business. We've talked. But there are many people like Antonio. And they keep seeing Biden as this guy who's just another Trump in his own way, and it's going to continue the old Democratic way. And I don't agree. And I think I've seen a change in Biden in a certain sense, just how he emotionally is responding to things now.
May I stop you? I know you want to do this, but I'm going to jump all over you. And I do it differently each week. I don't care what you say. I just want to hear myself.
Fine.
Now, you said emotionally. I think that has to be emphasized. Why is it going to be different under Joe Biden? Has emotions. A psychopath does not have emotions. A sociopath does not have emotions. A narcissist does not have emotions. All of those three terms, narcissist being the textbook definition, apply to Donald Trump. So what is the difference? Joe Biden feels. He has empathy.
Right. And not only that, you're going to think I'm crazy, folks, but Joe Biden is old, and he's had multiple deaths in his immediate family. Death has always been around him, and he knows the time is near the end for him. And I think here's a guy who wasn't making a lot of money for a decent part of his life. He was a blue-collar guy. He had a blue-collar father. I really believe that when you reach that age and you do have empathy for people, that I think he's going to throw a lot of things out the door. I personally believe that Biden is a sympathetic person enough to say, this country is scarred. And if I can do one thing as president is try to bring it back, because we're in deep trouble. And he knows about the problems with the environment. Why would a 77-year-old guy just completely think about corporations at that point? He's already lost it. Would you think he'd rather have the corporation money or his son back, folks? I'm not pointing the finger at you, but I'm saying this is the type of thinking that people, the bullshit that, and this is Republicans who hate him because they think he's an asshole and a socialist. And then the left wing, who won't vote for him, they're too much shit in their pants. They're afraid because they think he's going to go right wing on everybody. The man has a lot more to lose if he does crap like that.
Well, that's all.
He has so much more to gain to doing the right thing.
Here's something else that I used to argue with. Not even argue with. I mean, they have a right to their opinion too. Let's say debate. I don't like arguing. Okay. Let's assume for a moment that you are a leftist and, you feel that both parties, et cetera, are equal. First of all, that's not true. Not the one party. No two things are equal. Okay. Nothing in life is equal. Now, when I hear and listen down here, we get a chance to do that a lot. I'm not saying, it's just because I live in D.C. I mean, I got to spend time with Occupy. I got to spend time with Antifa, talk to them. They're not an organization, they're a group of people. But anyway, to me, it makes sense. Biden is going to take the direction, if you're a leftist and you're not a rightist, you're not a fascist, you're Antifa, anti-fascist, he's going to move the country more, and you're going to have less to walk. The way I would say it is, if you thought, you're getting closer to your goal, right? People say not with Obama, but certainly America was headed in a gentler, kinder, more empathetic way. Now, Trump comes and puts you 75 miles behind, right, in 7 days. And now Biden's going to come along and make up some lost ground. If he doesn't work out,
I'm moving around here with comments.
I still think you're in a better position. I mean, I really do. Now, if you're the type of person who's just burn it down tomorrow, then I will ask you, that I've asked you, what do you replace it with? There's an interim period. And I'm saying, if you're unhappy, to say that Trump and Biden are the same person, absolutely not. To say that the Democrats and the Republicans are the same, absolutely not. To say that I don't like either one of them, fine, but what are you going to replace them with?
Right. And by the way, this is why I'm going to leap ahead, because I know, Sandy, you're online right now in our chat room, and she said, I voted for Jill Stein, but there's no way I'll do that this time. So here's somebody who has a large following on the left, people who actually don't like what I have to say, but she...
Well, Brian, nobody likes what you
No, of course not. Of course not. But what am I here for? I got to keep people, wound up, so to speak. But
the right and the left love to hate.
This is, I think, where the logic really starts coming in, where you say to yourself, we are at a critical point, critical mass. You're in the nuclear power plant, and you've got the on and the off button, and there's no I don't know what I want. You just sooner or later have to look at it from Jeremy Bentham's utilitarianism. You weigh the pluses and the minuses, and then if it's a little bit more plus, you go for that. It's so simple, but it's so hard for people because they hold grudges, and they again. And I know, Dave, you'd say they get to vote the way they want. That's fine. I'd say vote the way you want. Just don't vote for Trump.
Oh, now there's a change, Brian. A couple of weeks ago, no.
Well, no. Look, I'm saying at least you're out of the way. I'm saying if you're going to have a fight with somebody, you don't want a third party involved screwing it up.
Well, first of all, I think again, and I feel very safe in saying this: the 2020 election, from every aspect of it, will be unlike any election in the history of America. We've never had an election. We've had elections in depressions, correct? We're in a depression. I don't care what you say.
Yes, if you're out of work, you're in a depression.
We're a recession 4 weeks away from a depression or whatever. We've had elections in a pandemic. But we've never had it all this time. Campaigns we've built up. Modern campaigns are different. Modern campaigns are football games, right? Who has a cheering crowd? We're not going to have any of that. Okay. Now, and again, I'm not so much worried about the left, the extreme left. I'm more interested in pulling the moderate or the sensible Republicans, not to be Democrats forever. Let's not kid ourselves. I think the Lincoln Project has the most effective ads I've seen in my lifetime.
Much more effective than any of the Democratic Party.
I think the most effective ad, which has been judged historically, and if you don't know it, ladies and gentlemen, please look it
Johnson.
up. It was called the Johnson ad, right? The Daisy ad. And it only ran once, and Johnson pulled it, but it was so effective. I mean, it was just wow, and that's part of it. The Lincoln Project is putting out those ads, maybe not quite to that level, but
they're approaching it.
Total. Now, what I try to ask Republicans, and I don't consider that, if you're voting for Donald Trump, I don't consider you a Republican. I don't consider you a conservative. Here's why I say that. George Bush, who is a Republican, was the last Republican prior to Donald Trump to hold the presidency. George Bush has said, I'm not voting for him. He's contributing some of his PAC money to defeat Donald Trump. Are Donald Trump supporters going to tell me that Donald Trump is more of a Republican than George Bush? As my friend, I wish he were my friend, as Brent Terhune, who everybody should be watching, I don't think so. All right. You talk about, someone who, again, has given their life for the Republican Party. That would be Mitt Romney, ran for president. He will not vote, he said, for Donald Trump. Now, George will, and I bring him up just because he is the greatest conservative mind writer. They're smarter. They're probably smarter conservatives than him. They're probably better writers. But putting it together, he is the ultimate conservative, I believe, of my lifetime. The only competition is Bill Buckley. And George Will goes so far to say, not only shouldn't you vote for Donald Trump, but you shouldn't vote for anybody who seemed to support him. He realizes that the Republican Party, that was a conservative party, seemed to be, is not that anymore. So I see I'm more interested in seeing that. You're seeing that with suburban housewives pull away. Again, you hear, well, don't trust the polls. Don't trust the polls. Well, let's look at that, too. Do you realize, and Brian, I'm saying it to you because, we're speaking, but I've gone back to that because I was worried about that, too. But you know where the polls were off, Brian? Do you know where they were off in the 2016? Yeah, 2016. You know where they were off? They were spot on. They were spot on in 47 of the 50 states. Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. George Bush. Donald Trump won Pennsylvania by a total of about 11,000 votes, right? Something like that. Now, I don't want to upset feminists. I think Hillary Clinton was prepared for the job. I think she would have made a good president, but she had some specific Clintonian baggage. All right. And Joe Biden doesn't have that. To a certain extent, Al Gore maybe had some Clintonian baggage. I still think Al Gore, if he had worked closer with Clinton and Carville and Clinton's people, he probably would have won. However, he couldn't win Tennessee, so he didn't deserve to be president, I suppose. So, I'm saying, I just think, again, this is fun, okay? We get to speculate. We get to talk about it. We get to be the very thing I despise, talking heads who don't know what they're talking about or do know. But it really comes down, to Election Day. And it comes down to three things. Where are we pandemic-wise in Election Day? Where are we in terms of Republican cheating and / foreign government interference on Election Day? And where are we weather-wise on Election Day?
Right.
Now, I saw a statistic today, and I've got to check it out. If anybody knows this is true tonight, please let me know now. That they've done some studies, and that it takes 45% of the time longer to cast a vote in a predominantly black precinct than it does in a white precinct. Wonder why that is. Could that have anything, all that and all this factors into it. But again, I'm going to go to bed tonight believing that Joe Biden will be president come November X. And why do I say X? It may be too close to call, right away.
Okay, well, we've had so many comments, Dave. We did have a lot of comments on the school issues. I could go through those.
We can come back to that.
We can come back to that.
Whatever. Just get some people in. It's you and I and you and I. Somebody asked.
Well, I know Sandy's been talking about Doug, her husband. He works at a high school, and he himself is worried. Of course, he's part of the staff there, and that's understandable. So again, this is a very countrywide thing. This is just not New Jersey. Yeah. And we know that, folks. We're just both from New Jersey, but it doesn't matter. We understand.
And also, Brian, living down here, in wealthy country, there's a thing now. The rich get richer, right? Moneyed groups are getting together, 2 or 3 families, maybe with 6, collision. They're going to hire teachers to teach their kids.
Right.
They're actually approaching different popular teachers. In supermarkets, not all, maybe some of them. You're beginning to see ads, we'll tutor.
Right, but for the ones who can't afford it, it creates a problem.
And there you are. So the gap gets greater.
Right. Dave, I wanted to... actually, Sandy had an interesting comment here. She's talking about Doug, her husband. She said, without Doug's job, we can't afford health insurance. I'm not losing my retiree health because of this fucking inept moron we have as president. So you can see how Trump is really affecting people's decisions because he's taking away things.
America is insane that we base health insurance on our job. Think about that. Think about how many people, and Sandy, that's just Americans talk about exceptional. I think sometimes we're exceptionally stupid. If you look at the rest of the westernized world, they all have some kind of, health care that's not dependent on work.
Right. By the way, we've had some others that said the same thing as Sandy. Kim, first of all, Kim, hello. Kim is usually in our chat room during the shows and on Facebook. So she said that she is going to vote for Biden because, she wants to get the asshole out. So I think we're starting to see people on the fence. Some are falling over. Would you say that, Dave? It seems I
always worry about sounding like Trump. There's good people on both sides. Well, no, not when you're talking about the Klan and the Nazis. No, they're not. Okay, they're not good people. But no, I think here you are. I think what's really happening, I really think that good people on the extreme left, and there's certainly a place for extremity. Certainly, if you're an environmentalist, it's pretty hard to be a centrist. It just is. If you really believe, as so many of us do, that we're just not doing the job. Um, but you're also seeing those who aren't so deep into the cult of Donald Trump coming to this side. So yeah, I don't. I don't know if there's a swelling movement. Um, Judging from my page, because I like to keep what's that old cliche? Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. I keep an open page. It is hard sometimes, but that's interesting. So I don't see it there, but I do know a few people, uh, that I think voted for Trump who are not going to do it. And if I know a few, there's more. And
Right,
a
and you
different
make the
few.
point that Sandy here makes. You've made this point before that the progressive will be able to hold Biden accountable.
Absolutely. Look, if you're a progressive and you think that your candidate, now some is Bernie, Bernie's going to have a hell of a lot of power. Okay. If you think Elizabeth, she was my choice. Elizabeth is going to have a hell of a lot of power. She and Joe. Now, see, the Democrats, Carville said the other night, I think it's true, he said, the Democrats are a coalition, a shifting coalition, and that's true. They're not, the Republicans are pretty much an ideological party. Democrats aren't. Shifting coalition. But so I think the coalitions, whether it's Bernie, Elizabeth leading one, Buttigieg, the young Kamala, it doesn't matter whom, they realize they have to get Trump out of there. So Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden are holding a what would you call it? An open community forum Friday, and that's how we'll begin to see. But right now, again, nothing will convince. I'm not saying nothing will convince me, but nothing right now says that Biden and Trump are the same person or will run America in the same way. And I think what's often overlooked or underlooked is the fact of the Bill of Rights. Trump tramples on the Bill of Rights. And as far as I'm concerned, if you take the Bill of Rights and the amendments and kind of toss the Constitution, we'd still be okay. And Joe Biden is not going to do that.
Right. I just don't know why there's such a fear of Biden when you have a complete lunatic in there right now.
Well, again, you and I see that a little bit differently. I understand there is, the system is broken. Okay, that's kind of provable, but then you got to ask, well, how do we get the system fixed? And I think Joe Biden puts us on the right track with the right train with the right people to begin that job.
Right. I can't even see, I don't. Look, it's just the way his family is. I don't see him lasting more than one term anyway.
Well,
I don't
he's
get
kind
morbid,
of indicated that, and but who knows? Let's wildly speculate here. Joe Biden cannot be the president Joe Biden wanted to be when he started. Right? No pandemic. Right. Nope.
that's just as simple as you've got to get that. He can't be the Biden that you think he wanted to be.
It could be good, bad, worse, whatever, but he can't be. He can't be the president that Donald Trump is because Trump is the leader who got us in all these messes.
And it's so easy it will be easy for Biden to be a hero. And Trump could have been a hero himself. He had so many opportunities. But Biden will have the perfect opportunity to save the country, get some movement, get us into the 21st century, save the planet. He could, his name could be etched in stone. You don't have to put him on Rushmore.
I'm thinking
put him on Mount Everest.
I'm thinking of FDR, right? The next president, this is another thing I would say is we need an FDR type, right? Our war, his war was with the fascists. Our war is with a virus. The Depression, we're in that now. We've got a divided country. FDR did not do really well in terms of race relations, certainly, but Eleanor was a pretty strong advocate for it, and she got some things started. I think, again, the problem is maybe sometimes I think about this. there are so many problems in America that we've let go. Race being one, gender inequity in pay, class. I mean, and if you're affected by one or two of those, you want that one ended. It's not that you don't look at the others, right? But if you're hungry, you want to get fed. If you've been shot, you want to get to the hospital. And American people are hurting there. And I think this pandemic, wouldn't it be interesting? And we're not talking about divine or God or a white bearded man or something, but there's theories, and I mean they're just speculative theories, but they're kind of interesting that the pandemic was kind of a wake up call. Not that nature got together, and the bunny whispered to the lion, and the lion roared it out, and everything. But we do pay for what we did, and certainly the pandemic there are two factors that are factored into that. We've destroyed environment, which has moved animals and other things, different places, and environmentally. But then also with modern technology and distance, which is a wonderful thing, we now can be around the world in 24 hours. So the modern age and our disrespect or contempt for the environment certainly played a role in this. And so Biden is going to have to, address that. And I've often wondered, and you have to ask Trump people this.
Wouldn't he rather be the hero of the people than, coming through for GE?
The question becomes, you can't be all things to all people. You can't, okay? The world would be much better if they just recognized that they should just let me run it. And but even my wife won't let me do that, so I'm not even the boss in my own house, thank God. But the point is, I think again, Brian, we come from a little different angle, but we both arrive at the same conclusion. It's very simple. It's going to be Joe Biden unless he dies before the election. It's going to be Donald Trump unless he dies before the election. One of the two of them are going to win. There'll be some third-party candidates that people are certainly entitled to vote for. I would ask them, are you sure that's what you want to do?
But at some point, look, you and I me more, I more than you have dealt with this in terms of, being online, but now you've gotten a good taste of it.
Right.
But I think for us, there's some point where we say, you know what, just like I said, shit or get off the pot. If you want to vote for whomever, that's fine. Just don't vote for Trump. Get out of the way and let the two big boys go at it.
And again, I give you I hate to say, I'll give you credit for growth.
Well, I want to be honest. Jesus Christ.
That is part of it. Part of it is the reality is if you vote for Trump, that's a vote for Trump. That's the reality. If you don't vote for Trump, that's not a vote that Trump got. Okay? Now, so that's it. So would I prefer that people vote for Joe Biden? Absolutely. Do I have a right to tell them how to vote? Absolutely not. If they really believe that Jesse Ventura, who's talked about running, or Kanye, for God's sakes, okay, just make sure you're not doing it as a protest vote. That's all. You know what I mean? Make sure that's the guy or the woman you want in the White House. That's all I ask.
Well, I have my suspicions about those type of voters anyway. I've always felt that there's a certain portion of them that were raised in conservative environments, and though they don't like the Republican Party, they grew up around it, and therefore they have certain animosities that are learned, and that's how, of course, racism is learned, but it's not just racism that can be learned. You can learn a lot of other things that are not that good just being around the TV in 1968 and somebody saying those goddamn hippies are going crazy in Chicago, and then all of a sudden 40 years later you're saying the hell with Biden, because that stuff doesn't leave you sometimes.
Yeah, well, the other thing is, unfortunately, this is the human condition. We are individuals, but we're also by nature social beings. And again, shout out to my dad, he's been dead a long time. But
and he was born a long time ago.
Yeah, but he had a lot of wisdom. And unfortunately, when we're young, we don't always pick it up. But, it comes back to you, you learn it later. And it just means so much. I throw this in, and I do say literally throw it in the faces of Trump supporters. You are who you hang with, right? And that's true. And sometimes you can't help but hang with. I mean, it's very hard if you're born into a religious sect to get out of it, right?
Absolutely.
It's very hard if you're black and you live in an all black community, not to pick up traits of blackness, whatever they are. And that's tough to do. And for some people,
and again, I won't go into this any more than the one word. There's your determinism there, and I think we.
That's part of it too, Brian. And you and I can do a whole show, and I can just.
But I'm just saying, at that level, we can agree that this is something from the past.
Absolutely, because it's very hard. I mean, and I've said it. I'll say it again. I'm not real sure about two things. I'm not real sure. A lot of people think it's just preordained that America is going to go on. Empires and countries rise and fall, right? We've been on a pretty good run for a while, depending on who you are. Certainly not if you're, not if you're an oppressed minority or something. But that's part of it. And the second thing is, maybe we're a little too diverse right now in the 21st century to be one country. Now, we don't want to get into that. And, I raised that. No, I mean, that's just a reality. You have the coasts, right? We have, and sometimes it's geographic. With the Civil War, it was basically a line drawn, right? South versus North, pretty much. When you talk conservative and liberal, it's not necessarily lines, but, you hear the talk. I don't want to be around them farmers and them rednecks, and I don't want them, I don't want those urban guerrillas. And so, we'll see what happens. But I think, again, asking if Joe Biden is elected president, which I think he will be, and again, I think we'll be in better shape. We'll never, and I'm almost glad we'll never achieve the Trump slogan of "Make America Great Again," because it was never great for 100% of its people.
Don't tell that to your neighbor. They may blow your head off with a shotgun.
I'm fine. I saw Easy Rider. That's
right. Well, like that final scene essentially is what we all worry about.
And again, I don't know if any of you are my age. Brian's a baby. I have socks older than him. But if you're my age, 68, a little bit older, just a little bit younger, it really is deja vu right now. But not history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. I mean, put Nixon in the Trump role, right? Put the college protesters and the anti-war protesters in the role of Black Lives Matter, and this kind of thing. And so, again, I think maybe in a way, Trump is going to make America better. He should have just said that.
Well, let's not give him too much credit. Now, you mentioned Easy Rider, Dave, and get me.
Which now leads us to make it better. Like you said tonight, Brian, there's many less fence sitters than there were in 2016. Yeah, you're not super
thing. Now, you mentioned Easy Rider, which, obviously, and I've said this before, you think of life imitating art, art imitating life, and it certainly does have a lot of meaning, because a few of the films from those days meant a lot to me, and one of them certainly was Easy Rider.
That did star Joey Heatherton?
Yeah.
I thought you were.
Look, you liked her just as much as I did, so don't.
Yes, there's no question about that.
Okay, but I do want to mention Five Easy Pieces, which was not political, but it was the idea of alienation, and a lot of people didn't like Nicholson's character. His name was Bobby Dupuy. They mentioned climate change kind of in a roundabout way and all, but I always. Again, I like looking at movies because sometimes I see myself, like the alienation thing, because Bobby Dupuy, he had expectations with his family to live the American way, a certain thing. In a certain way, just like in Easy Rider, they were looking for America and they didn't find it. And Bobby Dupuy grew up in a family that wanted to be successful musically, and he just didn't buy into it. And he just felt that, I think he said something to the effect in the movie, the reason why he didn't get involved with other people's because he knew that there was an impending danger being around people. So the best thing for him was just to keep away. And now I see the truth of this country, that we have a certain alienation which was kind of brought about in the 60s and through film. I think that film kind of started it, Five Easy Pieces. And then you see things like Easy Rider, where it shows that America that we thought of, and then we went to Born on the 4th of July and the rest of them, really shows what the truth really is about this country. And as you say, it never really was great.
Now, the beauty of America is in its words, right? And not just the words of the founders, but the words of Martin Luther King, the words of Abraham Lincoln. The words are what's so beautiful. And that gives us a goal. It gives us something to strive for. Now you have to change a little bit. All men are created equal does not have the same meaning today. Again, if I could have my druthers, I would have said I don't think that's even possible. But all people should have an equal opportunity to be the best that they can be. And I hate to steal from the military, but I mean I think that's more what we're talking about. I mean, I can't play basketball like LeBron James. I couldn't if we were the same.
You can't play basketball like you used to play basketball.
Well, that's true too. Okay,
none of us can.
Gary
a lot of things we can't do quite as well as before.
I can still outshoot Gary now, but the idea of it is when you look at these things, and the other problem with America, and it's the same. We don't teach civics anymore, which I think we should. I think we have to understand the government. And people still might not. But, I mean, when you hear one of the most misunderstood concepts in America is free speech. It's the most misunderstood. The only free speech that you really have is the government can't do anything to censor you. Bosses can. You can, Brian, this is your show. You can say right now, you're fired. And I mean, I would expose the fact that you're not wearing underwear.
Fire myself. Sometimes I feel like firing myself.
No, but what I mean, and I remember I used to.
I'm bad for ratings.
I really love it when my kids would say, because I was always trying to get them to think, not politically in the sense of a party or whatever, but think about how you want to take the stand in the world in terms of what you want to be. Mr. Price, we got some free speech. We can talk whatever we want. No, not contraire, my young friends. And, it's the same. Or we go to the Second Amendment, well, it gives us the right. No, it says a well-regulated militia. I think too many people, just like many people, don't look at the Bible. They listen to somebody interpret it for them, or any religious book, or any other book for that matter. And, I think you have to read it, then you have to look at some experts, and you have to see what's going on with any of those things. But when you walk away from it, I think you do see, and the ultimate irony to me is that the Republicans and Trump, who has no center or base, but for whatever today is, they're talking about defending the Constitution and stopping these radicals. But the radicals are the ones that gave you your country.
They're projecting. Right, and that makes it very insulting. And by the way, I would hear that from Bill Barr today, and I don't want to go into him, but that's essentially what we're, it's that. But I think we'll have to take this up in future shows, Dave, because I love film, and so do you, and I think that there is that period of film in the 60s.
Well, I think I think there are. Now, here's something that I mean, not that the pandemic. I mean, 100 years, right? Kind of interesting. Let's look at that. 1619, right? We get slavery. That starts here, right? And roughly 100 years later, we get World War I and a pandemic, which changes the world again. And now here we are again. Now, I'm not saying that anybody's drawing this out 100-year plan, but I think again, not just because I lived through it, not just because it was the most shaping period of my life. The 60s and 70s, up until disco, had an energy to it. And there's many. I mean, as a writer, that's what I write about. And the 60s were not 1960 to 1969. There were many 60s.
Right, but would you agree with me, Dave? And this we're kind of going in a different direction. We always do this at the end of the show, but you look at Brando, and Brando was what was called a method actor, and that's the Stanislavski School.
Yes, Mr. Marlin, yes.
Okay, Stanislavski School of Acting was a Russian thing where you became the character. You didn't simply act it out; you became it. And then you look at movies like Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, or the Streetcar Named Desire, and On the Waterfront. He's kind of like the 70s actors. He did it in the 50s. But the great method actors of our lifetime have been Al Pacino, Dustin Hoffman, Marlon Brando, I said Al Pacino, but who's the other one? The one that hates Trump.
Robert
De Niro. So these are your method actors, and it seems like it always worked well within this idea of telling the truth about America.
Well, see, what's interesting
Deer
about
Hunter.
That, and there's been thousands of words, literally many, many books written on that. And, the age-old question is, do people create the times, or do times create the people? And usually it's a jointure, right? So the 1920s and the 60s share a lot in common. Mores, new ways of living. And if you go back and look at the 60s, and I was, a part of this, a lot of the hippies were able to live the way we wanted to. I was not a hippie. I was a political radical, but, similarities to it. We were able to do that because our parents were able to find, we're coming out and basically what happened kind of with the 50s and 60s, there was this push for money, sort of like very similar to today. And a number of us said, is that all there is?
So
that's what I'm saying, that 50s and 60s.
Hunter Thompson.
And so you've got that. And it's very interesting to me that in the same time, I think young people today are saying, wait a minute, there might be more to this. Now, you say, well, wait a minute. No, it's not. I think, and I should know the young gentleman's name. He was a highly recruited basketball player. And he's probably going to go to the pros. I mean, unless something happens. And he did something that was unthinkable almost prior to this. He is now going to go and play for Howard University, an all-black university here. That's unheard of. And they ask him why. He says, because I now understand what's important. And I think, that's why I'm optimistic. I think young people today understand.
Well, first of all, I mean, we want to make sure we clarify that with people. Howard University is a great school, too. They don't just take people in. I mean, that's like a Harvard-type school.
Name me a professional, name me a pro basketball player that went to Harvard. You know why you can't? There's never been one, okay?
I know a hockey player that has. That was very intelligent. It was Ken Dryden, the goalie, but that's...
Oh, no, I'm not. Oh, Howard's... I mean, it's...
It's they don't play around.
I mean, I've done work there.
Because they don't want to embarrass themselves either. They want, they want this thing to... They wanted it to work, and so they had it.
And I mean, I think, again, I'm very encouraged. And I think, I can't speak for Joe Biden, but I think if he looks at young people, and Barack has spoken very eloquently about this, I think he's going to be encouraged too. And I think that also helps him to be something different. You know what encourages Donald Trump? Donald Trump. Donald Trump's world.
You know what we need? We need a film between now and November that helps our cause.
Yeah, but you'll just want to get Joey Heather.
But you know what? You can't even, because now you can't even go to the theater. You have to watch it at home. And
I think that's another thing that throws everything out of whack. Not that, but they're talking about the new norm. We don't even know what that's going to be yet, right?
Now you tell me.
We don't know. Tell me when the pandemic's going to end. Now, so that brings us back to this Trump-Biden race. I mean, I feel very safe in saying this will not be like anything else. You hear that all the time. Well, this is this new ice cream is not like. Well, no, it's still ice cream, okay? But this is not going to be. I was thinking about that the other day. That the pandemic, obviously. We went to the airport to finally cancel our tickets for Australia, which we kept open because we're not going to go there. I mean, it's just clear.
But look at the things.
that
Look,
airport-
I'm sorry, Venera. Go ahead. Continue.
airport. It's not an airport.
Right.
Okay. It's like not empty, but that's
But
not.
look at our lives, our hobbies. What we're doing right now is just something
no.
3 years ago I wouldn't have done. This was out of my anger that I started doing the YouTube thing.
And I actually was talking to Dave
In this way, though. I did YouTube before that, but not in this format or perspective.
And again,
Then we're meeting people online who are now you're developing friendships with people
Well,
you
it's all-
would
and-
never
and-
have met otherwise.
and I think you're seeing a lot of articles or writers, not so much articles. I mean, well, they are articles, but written by people saying, this did give me some time to reflect, or I get out in nature. I think, I think maybe I'm naive. Call me Pollyanna in men's clothing, but I think this did give us kind of a pause to look at some of the things that are important, that aren't necessarily what a lot of people thought they were. Now, my good friend, who's going to be my good friend, he's not yet, he doesn't know it, Jeff Bezos, and Mackenzie's going to be even a better friend. That's his ex-wife. I'd have to ask Jeff, seriously, I mean, he has more money than anybody else in the world, other than possibly Putin. We don't know how much he has. But is he happy? I mean, I don't know. Maybe he is. Maybe he's deliriously happy. I don't know. But,
But everybody's picking on Jeff Bezos, though, and I again, I get it. He's a rich guy. He makes more money than we could ever make in 1 minute. But again, I think you have to look at the company, what they're creating.
Oh, I'm not.
As Guy Lane said, he wouldn't mind if Exxon were making money, but making efficient fuels or just using the type of energy. And Guy's got it right. So I don't really have anything against Bezos if he does it right.
This against Jeff, even though we're going to be best friends. Did I mention his new headquarters in 3 buildings from where I'm sitting right now? No. But here's the thing I do hold against him. Yes, I think he's obviously, he's done good in supplying us with what we need.
And it's a very good route of supply going, from A to B in
I think he
saves money.
He could do. I don't fault him on the taxes because he's not breaking any laws. You know what I mean? It's, as far as I know, in terms of not paying his taxes, we need to restructure the tax laws. Where I do fault Bezos, though, is I think he could take it on himself to provide better care for his lower level workers. In terms of
well, he does give a minimum of $15. He gives them health care. I'm not saying that's good, but again, there are a lot of other fingers you can point first.
I mean, my personal, if you want to, okay, let's play the Biden-Trump game for a moment. I'm going to place Mark Zuckerberg as Donald Trump and Jeff Bezos as Joe Biden. I would take
more
Jeff
accurate
Bezos
analogy
any day over Mark Zuckerberg, and I'd probably take
or any Russian oligarch worth billions. That's a Donald Trump right there. They're stealing the wealth of the country there, and they're influencing us here.
Yeah, and there may be again. How is this? This sounds so harsh and cold, and I don't want it to, but it's not a winnowing. You know how you hear the winning of the tribe, but small business was on its way out, but I think it will return because I think the real businesses that are gone are the large businesses like the mall businesses. You know what I mean? The nationals that overexpended too much. Target. The winners of this will be obviously the winners of the retail will be Amazon, Target, Walmart. Oh, got to go to bed. Sandy, I need to talk.
I hope
to you.
You'll join us next week too.
Yeah, I'm going to get a hold of you between now and next week. So just expect a phone call or I don't know, an email or something. Now
Dave's crazy. I wouldn't be surprised if he shows up at your door.
Hey, if you move to Canada, I'm coming with you. No, upstate New York. I don't think Donald Trump can reach up there. But no, the point is, I mean, it sounds like, oh man, where do these guys go? They're way off. No, but they're not. Okay, Trump. Here's another thing. Trump represents an old America that never should have been. Okay. Joe Biden you could argue, was part of that too. And you go back and look at his record, in the Clarence Thomas hearings. I mean, you can see a lot of falsity. The one I love, hey, the Democrats invented the Klan and Lincoln freed the slaves, and Lincoln was a Republican. And well, let's talk about today. That wouldn't be same thing. But I think Biden, again, I think he's going to get younger people around him. Look, with the exception of Elizabeth Warren, and I don't think he will pick Elizabeth Warren. Every female, it's going to be a female. We know that. They're all younger. Now, that doesn't mean younger is better, right? But it just means they're going to be closer. One of the things is this young generation, nobody's of age to run it that yet. Do you realize, they have lived in a time when it was not safe to go to school, right? So they're going to have a collective mindset that's going to be a little bit different. And I noticed that when they, working in the museum and getting a chance to talk to some of the students from Mary Stoneham High School, some of the teachers who were leading it. And I don't mean just the leaders like David Hogan, Emma Gonzalez. I mean, they're exceptional. But I'm just talking about the average kids. And they're out there, and I think they're really going to make a difference. And look at the TikTok kids. They fucked with Trump. The TikTok kids got his campaign director fired. I mean, think about that. Because the campaign director went into this TikTok, they were forging, or not forging, but and these kids who probably some of them haven't even much reached puberty yet.
Right. Got him
but they got the guy fired, and now wonderful. He was doing other things. I mean, but, and they made the president look like a fool. Right. And young people, here's something profound. I imagine people are glad if they paid attention to us for 2 hours to hear this. The young people are our future. Well, you know what? That's true. And I'm not going to be around when they assume power, because usually around 30 you start to assume
if we
power.
don't blow it completely.
Well, of course, Brian, and that, and you and I mean.
I just want everybody out there to understand that David and I know that.
No. And basically, I'm an optimist in everything, and I'm even an optimist in climate change. I will concede that I don't know enough of the science, and there are some scientists who say we're already past the point of no return. And if that's true, then, okay. But you still okay.
You still fight the fight.
It's a terrible, well, that's part of the other thing is, again, I'm going to leave, shout out to Judy, who was kind enough to let me know she's gone to bed tonight. We have to fight because she's down the other room. I moved where I am. But, she is a compulsive cleaner, right? And I laughed at her and I said, hon, if you were going to die in 5 minutes, you'd still want to clean the house. She said, yes. And I said, why? She said, because I want to make it the best that I can make it. And I think that analogy is sort of appropriate, even if we are doomed, if you will. We should make the world the best we can now. Guy Lane was on the show, and I'm not sure I remember the Guy Lane fan club, but I think he is very bright. Right. I think I'm paraphrasing what he said, but basically that's one of the things he said. He said, if you do that, you might just find that you weren't as far down the bad road as you thought.
Right.
But if you don't do anything, that could apply to the election sitting out. Now I want to bring it back, my final comments, back to teaching and education. I think this is how we have to look at it. I'm torn. Usually I'm not. Usually it's very clear. There is no right answer. There is no wrong answer. My first comments were rock in a hard place. If I'm going to err, I'm going to err on the side of caution and safety, my own, but more importantly, others. But I hope we don't fight over that because there's many valid reasons to get back to education as there are to hold off for a while. So I just hope that everyone can kind of respect the decisions and whatever they are, work as well as you can to make wherever you are, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a grandparent, whether you're a community member, to help out because it's going to be tough. And, it's just going to be tough.
Right.
I think it's the toughest thing we've got. I mean, you could, what, Google just came out, 2021? They're gonna do work from home till 2021. I mean, I guess we could do that in schools, but the idea of it is, I think we need to work, and that begins very simply. And what's the old again? I'm using all kinds of cliches tonight, but we're kind of. I never understood why I was preaching to the choir. Why not sing to the choir, but we'll say preach to the choir. Wear your goddamn mask.
Right.
Is that a lot to ask for a country? When you think about what people sacrificed, during World War II, right? When you think about John Lewis, who just died, when you think about what he sacrificed to make America better, when you think about what those moms and veterans are doing, who are forming human chains in front of these, as was described tonight, brown shirts, risking their lives to make America. I don't think wearing a mask is too much to ask. I really don't. So, Brian, I'm going to end with that. I'm going to let you close it out. I'll interrupt you as I always do, but I'll say I'm done.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for, showing up tonight. Again, I'm going to ask you if you would please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I know it's not that big of a channel right now. If you haven't done so already, please go to Facebook, add some comments. Remember, Dave has his blog.
And I do want to. I said I would interrupt you. I knew I was going to do that.
You knew you were going to do it, right?
I just want to prepare anybody listening, and they might watch the show later. For the next couple months, I'm going to deluge Facebook, where we have more people, with the blog, simply because we don't do anything on the blog that we do on Facebook. And so what I'll do is post some articles, links to articles, and ask people to join that. If anybody's listening, if you were to go there right now. Today I posted 4 articles dealing with the schools. Right. We try to I try to post maybe, in that case, it was why we should go back, why we shouldn't. But I guarantee you this, Brian, whether it is on this show, I want to thank you. I don't do that often enough, for having me on. Remember, do not call me a co-host or a host. I don't want anything to do with you that closely, but I'll certainly take recurring guests. Or whether it's on Facebook, which I try to contribute to the Divided We Stand page, or whether it's on the blog, I guarantee you this: there will never, ever be a statement out of my mouth, a post that I make on Facebook, or something that I place in the blog that will say anything of merit about Donald Trump. And there's a reason for that. There's nothing of merit to say about Donald Trump.
And on that note, folks, we're going to wish you a good night. Again, thank you, especially all of you in Australia and overseas. We really appreciate it. And we hope to see you next week. And perhaps we'll have Sandy on. And don't forget, we have other guests we're going to try to line up in the future. So it's been really nice. Dave, have a great night. And we'll see you next Tuesday. Adios, folks.
Ever-changing, never-changing cycle. Nothing. Life. Death. Nothingness. Or maybe even somethingness. socioeconomic status, political points of view, my mental capacity, mental illness, my culture, my family, what I eat, with whom I sleep, what I believe religiously. Am I defined by my past, present, future, my dreams, my failures, my strength,